So, Hare Krishna, dear devotees, thank you very much for joining. And today is a very auspicious day, the appearance day of Srila Prabhupada, straight after Sri Krishna Janmashtami. It's also Nand Utsav. So, Nand Utsav is actually when the Brijvasis celebrated the appearance of Krishna. And Guru Maharaj actually emphasized Nand Utsav, that we should celebrate the appearance day of Krishna on this day as well. Of course, we so out of energy after celebrating on Sri Krishna Janmashtami itself that we just tend not to be able to do too much. But of course, it's a double celebration because it's the appearance day of Srila Prabhupada as well. So we wanted to focus on Srila Prabhupada. In Nandutsav, Nanda Maharaj, he invited the Brahmins and he gave them, and the devotees and Brajvasis, and he gave them much in donation and asked for blessings for his son. And they had a fantastic Utsav festival because it's been a long time since they had a child. In fact, this was their first child. And they've been waiting, and it was a great, happy occasion for the Brijvasis. But let's focus on Srila Prabhupada. He was born on 1st of September 1896. So that is the day after Janmashtami, and in a place in a suburb of Kolkata, Toligunge. His father's name was Gaur Mohan De, and his mother Rajani named him Abhay Charan, one who is fearless, having taken shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Krishna. An astrologer prepared the horoscope for the baby and revealed when this child reaches the age of 70, he will cross the ocean, become a great teacher of religion, establish 108 Krishna temples. And extraordinarily, that's what happened. Exactly what happened. So it's a really fascinating prediction. Srila Prabhupada set out in America in 1965, like we discussed last week. He established the International Society for Krishna Consciousness at the age of 69, actually at the age of 70, because he was 70 on the boat journey. And probably he didn't establish it for another year or two after that. Anyway, he traveled around the world 14 times, established more than 100 temples of Krishna, and initiated more than 10,000 disciples into Krishna consciousness. Of course, that number is a little misleading because so many devotees have been inspired by the Bhaktivedanta purports over the years. So that's more like millions rather than 10,000. So some of his earlier pastimes are as follows. This is a wonderful picture, actually. Prabhupada always spoke of his early childhood with great fondness. And these are some of the recollections of his childhood from his books and conversations with devotees. My father was a pure devotee of the Lord. And when I was only 4 or 5 years old, he gave me a couple of forms of Radha and Krishna. In a playful manner, I used to worship these deities along with my sister, Pisima. And I used to imitate the performances of neighboring temple of Radha Govind. Radha Govindji was a very important temple at that place. In fact, it was owned by the wider family of Abhaycharan. By constantly visiting this neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in connection with my own deities of play, I developed a natural affinity for the Lord. I remember when I was only 1 year old, there was a great Sankirtan in our house, and I also joined this dancing party. Wow, I was seeing up to their knees, very small. So I remember those days. In Calcutta, there was a very virulent type of plague epidemic in 1898. So Calcutta became devastated. I think this was the cholera outbreak, wasn't it? All people practically left Kolkata. Daily hundreds and hundreds of people were dying. I was 1 year old or 1.5 years old. So one Babaji, he organized Sankirtan, Hare Krishna Sankirtan, all over Kolkata. And in the Sankirtan, all people, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Parsi, everyone joined. They were going road to road, street to street, entering in every house. So the plague subsided. This is a fact. Everyone knows history of Kolkata, knows that the plague was subsided by the Sankirtan movement. In my childhood, when I was 1.5 years old, I suffered from typhoid. And the doctor, Dr. Kartik Chandra Bose, he said, please give him chicken soup or juice. So my father refused. No, we cannot. He has not, no, he has to be given. That's what the doctor was saying. Now he has become very weak. No, I cannot allow. Don't mind, I shall prepare in my own home and send it. You simply... So it was sent from the doctor's house. And when it was given to me, immediately I began to vomit. And my father threw it away. When the doctor said, this was the medicine or something. No, then don't bother. My father's income was almost 300 rupees. So we were not very rich men. But we had no want. Father was maintaining his family, getting children married, distributing the wealth, everything very nice. And we never felt any want. In the mango season, because father saw to it that there must be full basket of mangoes daily for the children. So we were jumping, playing, and eating mangoes. When I was 6 years old, my father gave me a rath and encouraged me to observe functions such as Rath Yatra and Dola Yatra ceremonies. I was performing the Rath Yatra in my neighborhood. He used to spend money liberally for distributing prasad to us children and our friends. I received this training from a very beginning. Somehow or other, I had this spark of Krishna consciousness, and my father detected it. So it's very interesting how Srila Prabhupada, at the age of 6, he made his own Rath cart, in fact.
No, he bought.
Oh yeah, he bought. But then his father helped him decorate it. And together with all the neighborhood children, they organized a Rath Yatra festival, mini little festival.
And he got everyone to cook.
He got everybody to cook. And then we saw in his 70s, he delivered Rath Yatra to almost every city around the world. So this is incredible. My father, he took care of me in such a way that I became perfectly Krishna conscious. He taught me how to play the Madanga drum. My mother was against. There were 2 teachers, one for ABCD and one for teaching Madanga. The first one was waiting and the other teacher was teaching me how to play Madanga. My mother would be dissatisfied. She would be angry. What is this nonsense? You're teaching Madanga. What will he do with this Madanga? My father would say, no, you must learn a little Madanga. Father used to receive many saintly persons at our home. And to every one of them, he used to say, kindly bless my son so he becomes a servant of Radharani. This was his only ambition. He wanted me to become a preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam, and player of Madanga, to become a servant of Radharani. Every parent should think like that. Otherwise, one should not become mother and father. If due to past pious activities, one gets a good father and mother, that is a great chance for advancing in Krishna consciousness. I am very much indebted to my father, and I have dedicated my book, Krishna book, to him. This is a real son, eh? A real father, real son. Srila Prabhupada became a student of philosophy at this Scottish Churches College in 1916. It was a prestigious college. 1918, when he was in the 3rd year of his college, his father, Gaur Mohan Dey, got him married to Radharani Datta. In 1920, Mahatma Gandhi announced the non-cooperation movement. That's to fight the British through non-violent means. It was called to give up English education, English courts, English manufactured goods. And many people accepted this call and joined the movement. And there were many leaders like Motilal Nehru, Rajendra Prasad, Vallabhbhai Patel, etc. And Motilal Nehru is the father of Jawaharlal Nehru, was a very rich lawyer earning $500 every day. So they renounced everything. They joined this Gandhiji's movement. Gandhiji appealed to the countrymen to reject all foreign cloth and wear khadi only from India's own cottage industry. So, and he organized so many public meetings, and he would cause this non-violent protest. On the spot, people threw heaps of foreign cloths and set them ablaze in great bonfire. Students came out of government educational institutions, and Abhay, being one of those who gave up his English education and joined the Mahatma Gandhi's movement. And he started wearing khadi. However, in 1922, Abhay met his spiritual master, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, and this changed the course of his life. So he'd seen many sadhus in the past because his father would invite them, but he had very bad experiences with them. But a close friend of his, Narendranath Mulak, he insisted, come and see this sadhu from Mayapur. Abhay was a little bit reluctant, but his friend insisted. They went to this ashram where Bhaktisiddhanta was sitting, and he was preaching from the Srimad Bhagavatam. He looked like a very studious young man wearing sannyas robes and small round spectacles. Srila Prabhupada and his friend bowed down on the floor before him. And even whilst they were still rising and preparing to sit, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said immediately, you are a young educated man, why don't you preach the message of Krishna all over the world? Prabhupada could hardly believe what he heard. They had not even exchanged any words yet. The sadhu was telling them what they should do. So he asked the question, who will hear this message as long as we are a dependent country? India first must become independent, because he was part of this Gandhi movement. So how can we spread our culture if we are under this rule of Britain? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati replied in a quiet, deep voice, the message of Krishna cannot wait for a change in Indian politics. It is not dependent on who ruled. The teachings of the Gita are so important, so exclusively important that it cannot wait. That's very powerful, very, very, very powerful statement by Bhaktisiddhanta. Anyway, walking away from the ashram, Narendranath asked Abhay, what is your impression? What do you think of this sadhu? And he said, Prabhupada said, the message of Bhagavad Gita is in the hands of a very expert person. So later on, Prabhupada would say, I accepted Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur as his spiritual master. Immediately at that meeting, he was so impressed. So within his heart, he'd already dedicated himself to this amazing sannyasi, guru. And 11 years later, he took initiation. There's quite a gap. But he met Bhaktisiddhanta a few times in the middle. And this is in Allahabad, he took initiation in the Gaudiya Math. After taking initiation from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada was contributing to his spiritual master's mission by giving money, or he would help with the devotees, because his spiritual master left the planet in 1936. So there wasn't that much time that he met him. But also he could not give up his family commitments and take sannyas. So one time he wrote to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, I'd like to do some seva, some service for you. What can I do for you? So he received a reply on 31st December 1936. his spiritual master left 2 weeks after this letter. But in the letter, it said, gave the same order as he had received in 1922 when he first met his spiritual master. You try to preach whatever you have learned from me to the English people, speaking people of the world. That will be good for you and for the people to whom you preach. That is my instruction to you. And amazingly, Srila Prabhupada took that as the final order from the spiritual mind. He decided to make it his life's mission. And this is why we are here today, by his grace. In the years that followed, Prabhupada wrote commentary on Bhagavad Gita, continually assisting Gaudiya Math in its work. Well, so in 1944, he started the BTG, Back to Godhead magazine. So this was really innovative preaching, Prabhupada. This magazine was dedicated to persuading the general public that material life was the only reality, was not the only reality. Must prepare themselves for the real goal of life. Because this body will finish one day. It's so easy to understand. We see people dying all around us, but yet we're still thinking we're going to live forever. But actually, the whole aim of life is to return back to the spiritual world, rejoin our eternal Father, Sri Krishna. Of course, in those days, this is during the war, the Second World War. It's very difficult to do anything. But single-handedly, he would write the material, edit it, type it, check the proofs, and even distribute the individual copies. He was a one-man band. There was always a shortage of paper as well, because in the war, the government of India refused to allow paper to be used. But somehow or other, he managed to get permission to use paper and publish this magazine. Not just this magazine, but he published 3 books on the first canto of Srimad Bhagavata Purana. Extraordinary effort. He started this mission of League of Devotees in Jhansi. But it was not so successful there. It was very challenging because of the different politics. I think he was up against a lady who wanted her husband to form another society or something like that. Anyway, it was very challenging. He closed it down later. And then one day he had a dream. From Bhaktisiddhanta appeared before him and he was beckoning him to take sannyas. Abhay was shocked. He was a family man. He had a business. How can he take sannyas? How will he maintain himself? Then again, he had this another dream where Bhaktisiddhanta was again beckoning him. He had so many responsibilities. How could he take sannyas? He had 5 children. He had a big factory in Lucknow. The business was flourishing. But then suddenly everything dwindled over some small amount of time. He had this Prayag pharmacy in Allahabad, and unfortunately, so many things went wrong. Or fortunately, because it's said that when Krishna smiles upon you, he takes everything away, makes you fully devoted to him. And that's what happened to Prabhupada. In 1948, he closed his factory. He'd fallen behind in his employees' salaries. And things really, he lost everything, basically. So he decided to retire from family life. He must have been around 50, 55 maybe. And moved to the holy Dham of Vrindavan, where Krishna displayed his childhood pastimes. He lived in a very humble stairway. Radha Damodar temple. Initially, he was in another temple. Right?
Radha Vinod.
Radha Vinod temple, yeah. He had no income. He ate very little. He wore old clothes. He was always very happy, engaged in deep study and writing. He did not care for his own comforts. He just collected money to print the books. He was preparing himself. So 1933, he took initiation. 1936, he received the order from the spiritual master, and he went nearly 30 years later to the West. So all this time, what was he doing? He was preparing. And again, he had another dream. Bhaktisiddhanta again beckoning him to become a sannyasi. And this time, one of his godbrothers persuaded him that yes, you should now take sannyas. So in the morning of 17th September 1959, he took sannyas in the Keshavji Mat. And there was two of them. There was a 90-year-old man as well, Sanatan. And Keshav Maharaj was the presiding guru who gave Prabhupada this initiation, sannyas initiation. And even that time, Keshav Maharaj was also he knew Prabhupada had this mission. So he asked him to speak in English to the devotees. Nobody understood English. Common language was Hindi, but he was encouraged, speak in English. So this is a nice picture of Srila Prabhupada. This is Muni Maharaj, and this is Keshav Maharaj. He was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati as well. So this is an article that's been included. You want to read this?
Seeing his enthusiasm and ability to write articles in Hindi, English, and Bengali, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj gave him the instruction to take Dvedandit sannyas. For nearly 1 year, he'd been ready to accept sannyas. In the month of Bhadra, on the day on which Vishwarup accepted sannyas, Bhaktivedanta Swami at the Sri Keshavji Gaudiya Math accepted sannyas from the founder of the Vedanta Samiti, Bhakti Prajan Keshav Maharaj. Seeing him accept his ashram for renunciation, saying this pastime for accepting the renounced road of life, we have attained great affection and enthusiasm.
So, what's this doing here? I'm not sure I saw that. Anyway, a year later, he started his work on the multi-volume annotated translation of the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. He also wrote a book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, which also is booked in circulation. Is that the one? No, I don't know. Maybe.
Front cover.
Oh, okay.
Maybe.
And he was formulated in a plan. And of course, we've talked about the departure last week to the US. I won't go too much into that. Where he wrote that beautiful poem on the journey. And we sung that song as well. And that song was actually discovered a few years later by his disciples. Amazing poem that he had written. So after arriving in New York City, he struggled alone for a year to establish this Krishna conscious movement. He lived very simply. First, he was in Boston. Was it Boston or?
Boston.
Yeah. He was at the house of Gopal.
We had this picture.
Yeah. But he decided to go to New York. There wasn't that much potential in Boston at that time. So he went to New York. And where did he go? To the Bowery. He went to the, probably the place where we wouldn't be seen dead. But he went to the most incredibly fallen place in the world. Drug addicts, prostitutes, so many crazy hippies there. Extraordinary move, really extraordinary move. He got himself prepared. He bought tape, a reel-to-reel tape recorder. He recorded his books on that machine. He founded the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, July 1966. At that time, he hadn't even attracted one full-time devotee. This is really innovative stuff. and he was 70 plus. And the first time they did the Sankirtan outside the temple in the park, Tompkins Square Park, which Madhusudan Prabhu often tells us about how he went there. And still they have this tree where he's sitting, where there's a plaque now, which is extraordinary. So it signifies the spiritual importance of that place. And in that park, they attracted so many people who followed them to the temple. And over a period of time, these people became pretty dedicated, pretty dedicated. In September 8th, 66, he did the first initiation ceremony. I think he initiated, was it 5, 6 people? Six people, yeah. And then he was starting to travel. He went to San Francisco, then he went to Los Angeles, Boston, Buffalo. And then he sent his disciples to London, Canada, so many different countries. And they managed to establish this Hare Krishna movement throughout the world. He established 108 temples throughout the world with the help of disciples, and so many other farm projects and gurukuls. Bhaktivedanta Institute, which is the sort of scientific arm. And he, of course, translated pretty much the whole of the Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, initiating thousands of these devotees. Extraordinary person, extraordinary personality. He would travel from continent to country to country, city to city, town to town, preaching the message of Krishna. Food for Life, of course, he established, which is still going very, very strongly. So he fulfilled the prophecy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which was that all over the world, the holy names, in every town, village, the holy names will be spoken. And that's exactly what has happened. And even to the end, he was focused on his translating, writing the Bhaktivedanta purports. Tough picture to look at. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this is a really brief synopsis of Srila Prabhupada's life. Of course, there's a lot more in the detail, which we should actually read and know. If anybody like to say, normally when we have Srila Prabhupada's appearance day,
it's like a Vyas Puja.
Yeah, devotees would say some words of appreciation for what he has done to our lives. So I'd like to call upon devotees, if you'd like to share anything, doesn't have to be much detail, but as much as you like, actually, you can share. Yes, Kamakshi.
Hare Krishna. As you were narrating about Prabhupada's childhood times and all that, the colonial rule obviously had a positive outcome of Prabhupada learning English. And that was the biggest gift, I think, he acquired. And then he translated all the scriptures for us lot. So we are indebted for Prabhupada. And on this auspicious day of Srila Prabhupada, he is remembered all over the world. So he was a super soul, like the soul in a soul. Yeah. So Prabhupada ki jai, and whoever Prabhupada's been touched by, I think, have realized what a incredible personality he was. And I'm sure my sister Aruna, she's one of the examples that I can say. There are many people, but she's the recent one.
Absolutely.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj, and my obeisances to all the devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for sharing that. And you know, he, in the beginning, when he was speaking, the devotees couldn't understand his accent because it was a thick Bengali accent. He of course got the English through this Scottish school that he went to, college he went to.
Yeah.
But the most extraordinary, nobody could really understand him, but they could see his commitment in his, the love he, portrayed to them, sort of won them over. So they didn't understand the philosophy, but they loved him.
Yeah, and I think his dedication of really pushing what his Guru Maharaj had said to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati to translate and put forward Krishna in the whole world, and I think he did it. And for that, I admire him deeply. I think he was a margin, as I keep saying. As Maharaj said as well, and I second that. 13th margin. Hare Krishna.
He used to say the greatest spiritual revolutionist the world has ever seen. So, yeah, amazing. Okay, anybody else would like to say a few words? Karuna, Kaushalya, Sunil, Umadevi.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Yes, Kaushalya Maji.
Which one shall I sing?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you, anything you'd like to say about Srila Prabhupada? Or Karuna?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Karuna.
I would like to say that we are eternally indebted to Srila Prabhupada. He has done so much for us, has brought Krishna consciousness in our life. In 1976 or 77, when he came to Mauritius, I had a glimpse of him because he was in Shivala, in a mandir, in a temple in Mauritius, Hindu temple. And we were passing by with my Pitaji and Mataji. And then my Pitaji told us that he's a very great Swami from India. So we just had a small minutes or seconds of glimpse of him, and we went away, and our whole life changed. So he's powerful, he's incredible that how many lives he has changed like that. Just as his books. I have a friend who told me one day that he happened to buy a book, and then he kept that book without reading it. But even then afterwards, he can't explain himself how is it possible that his life changed a lot. He became vegetarian. He started going to ISKCON without knowing really how was that possible. So just as it were, so many people have said, the books are like little bombs in our house, and all these really make a change in our life. We can't really understand why, but it's the power of Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you. Very good. So when, how old were you at that time?
9 years old.
Okay. So you still remember that, huh? It's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah. And he said Mauritius is going to be the first Krishna conscious country. And it probably is, isn't it? Because so many of the devotees are...
So many around Mauritius now. So many temples have been built, and congregational groups in all towns, in all villages. You have so many devotees, initiated ones also. Yeah. So many lives have changed.
Indeed. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Does Chitra like to share anything?
No, Chitra is not with me.
Oh, okay.
Haribol.
Yes, hello.
Hare Krishna. I would like to share something.
Yes.
In the beginning, I couldn't understand the ISKCON philosophy, but I continuously listen to his recordings on the internet, and it took some years And after so many years, I realized that what she's saying, that's the real truth. So it was not so easy for me to get what he was saying all the time, because in the beginning I was hearing all the time cats and dogs. You're all cats and dogs. You're a fool, cats and dogs. And that was so difficult for me. But finally,
The penny dropped.
yeah,
He didn't mince his words, you're right.
and then I thought, no, this is the real thing. This is the thing we are missing. So we got the right thing. That's it. Thank you. Haribol. Hare
Thank you
Krishna.
for sharing that. Yeah, absolutely right. Absolutely. This is the real thing. Yeah, very good. Thank you for sharing that.
Sorry, Nabi Prabhu. I was just going to say, people who are not know much about Prabhupada, to read Prabhupada's biography. That changed my life.
Right. Very good. Is that the summarized one?
We got 2 volumes or 3, I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah. I think there's the 1 volume, which is his summarized, and then there's a 6-volume book, which is a lot of detail, which is definitely.
No, mine must be the other one.
Yeah, must read, because it's so much
Yeah, it's
nectar.
nectar in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, if anybody else would like to share anything, otherwise we can go to the Nrsimha Kavach. Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
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 Hare Krishna.